Hi there. In this video, I want to demonstrate the power of the Quad Draw tool in Maya, the tool that is used for retopologizing. And retopologizing is the process of recreating an object or rebuilding the mesh of an object in a more economic and optimized way where we can have full control over the geometry edge flow. Before activating the Quad Draw tool, there is one step that is needed. You select the object and then you go here and click on this. Make the selected object live. What does that mean? It means that it's going to turn this object into a magnet in a way or another. Meaning, any new geometry that I'm going to be creating is going to be snapped immediately on this object. And that is a great feature. Just keep in mind, just so you don't get really frustrated, that you have to deactivate this tool here or this feature as soon as you're done with the Quad Draw, because otherwise you're going to feel something is wicked about your file. So just keep in mind that you need to deactivate this button once the process of Quad Drawing is done or retopologizing. So now that I select the object and I click on the snap, now I go into the mesh tools and then I click on Quad Draw. One of the ideal places to start the Quad Draw tool process is usually, especially for human faces, and it also applies for creatures, is the area around the eyes or the lips, because we anticipate the looping structure, meaning that you need to have certain loops in order for the mouth to move and animate or get rigged organically in a way that looks natural. And also for the eye, for instance, you need to have the eye to blink exactly in a predictable way, in a way that the mesh doesn't look weird. That's why oftentimes you see 3D artists doing the Quad Draw tool around the eyes or the mouths, especially when it comes to creatures. In other words, you're starting with the priority. So that is really case-by-case basis possibly, and it's up to you to decide. Now, one thing that helps normally is to activate the wireframe on shaded, because then we know how the Quad Draw tool is going to function. Because the way the Quad Draw tool functions is that it creates points. I'm going to press with the left mouse button and just kind of hover the mouse and click with the left mouse button wherever you want. You're just creating points. And those are the points that are going to determine exactly how the mesh is going to be built. So just to give you a kind of a brief display of what the process is like. As you can see now, I have just created the mesh using the Quad Draw tool. So those points are going to be your new vertices, if you must, or vertex or points. So when you have a look at the wireframe or the mesh, you kind of predict how those points or where those points are going to be located. And normally you do this process for a high resolution geometry, so it's not necessarily always important. However, if you are retopologizing an efficient model, seeing the wireframe might be very important. Now, starting with the left mouse button, click, and I'm going to start with a loop around the eye. Now I can make it more fun and just start with the points only, but that might not be exactly the most educational process. In other words, I'm going to make it simpler by just starting with 4 points and then hold shift and click with the left mouse button. That is going to create a face. Now, point, point, hold shift, point, point, hold shift. And the thing is, because of this live snapping, you know that every click you do, it's going to be exactly on the right surface. Meaning, if I hit W and deselect the snapping, now I've completely deactivated the whole process of retopologizing. Now I can zoom in and more comfortably show you how that geometry is being built. And of course, because it's a more economic version, I'm not going to get exactly all the curvatures unless I want to build it at a higher resolution, which is not necessarily the goal or typically. But now you know that every point you create with the Quad Draw tool, I'm going to show you now that I'm really close here. I can go select the object, go to object mode, select this object, hit the live snapping, and then go to mesh tools. Now here's a pro tip for you. You know how I previously clicked on the mesh tools and went into the quad draw, here's a tip that very few people know about Maya. If you go with the middle mouse button and click on the whole menu, it's going to activate the last command or feature or a tool that you have activated. So with middle mouse button, click here, shift, click, click. Now, if I want to have a little bit more fun with it, okay, and this way I can just go and shift, and more importantly, you can click with the left mouse button and then drag the mouse. Now, in some cases, it's going to give you a mess, right? So you just want to make sure you direct it more carefully, and you can actually keep drawing all you want. Meaning, in other words, I can go here to the key element or key feature or something that is it needs to be very carefully made, like these points here, because notice how it identifies exactly that angle of the eye. So technically, here is the vertex that I need. So I can click and hold and then migrate this point exactly to the point that it's going to be resembling of the features of that creature. Now holding shift, there you go. Of course, you shouldn't be worried so much, or you shouldn't be obsessed about how careful these points are, because guess what? Not only can you, with the quad draw tool, move vertex, it's a multi-tool, meaning it can move a face. Notice how, because of the live snapping, it's going to move it on the surface of that eye area here. So you can move the face, you can move the point, you can move also edges. So with edges, you can just click on this edge and it's moving two vertices at a time. So why should you be concerned about a specific vertex when you can actually modify a whole edge? I just want to mention that you don't always have to go with that cool, funny shift approach when you can click and drag and you get all of the faces built. Instead, you can also, just to be very precise with what I meant, so instead of clicking shift this way, right, every time you have to click one additional point and do that, instead, this is now where we are warming up to this tool. I'm going to hold tab and drag with the left mouse button. See that? It's really cool, right? Well, it's not nearly as cool as the following. Hold the tab and then middle mouse button and then drag inwards. Check this out. See, you didn't have to go and click with the tab and then one here. And by the way, here's a pro tip as well for you. You can technically, in some tricky cases, you might have only the proper information of two faces only, and then in between you can go here with a shift and click. So you might think like, oh, I'm a genius, I know exactly how to use this tool. Well, better yet, you can hold down tab and then middle mouse button, and voila. See how nice it is? And also, while you're doing this process, tab and middle mouse button, notice how you can actually massage the geometry in a way that it gets you exactly the relaxed flow of the geometry. Once you have exactly the flow that you want, meaning that it's not twisted, it's not tweaked, it's kind of relaxed and comfortable, then you can release. Additionally, I'm going to actually drag it further. And because this is where you're really relying on that live snapping, now I'm going to show you how you can add resolution. You hold down Control and you click with the left mouse button. Crazy, right? Nice eyes, by the way. If you hold down Shift and then move, notice how it relaxes the geometry. And basically, it's just moving the components meaning face or edge or vertex, around until you get the proper result you're looking for. So the shift is your friend when it comes to relaxing the geometry. With that said, in some cases, the relaxation can be a little bit too much to the point where it ruins the flow that you're trying to maintain. For instance, if you have certain creases and you hold shift and you move it around, you might lose the identity of what you're trying to build. If you want to massage only, for instance, this component, the face or maybe the edge, without really massaging everything else, meaning, in other words, you want to limit the amount of relaxation that takes place. To do that, you hold shift, but this time instead of left mouse button, middle mouse button. When you click on middle mouse button, notice how it's only massaging that component we started with, or in other words, the highlighted component, opposed to shift and left mouse button. So shift middle mouse button is only for the highlighted components. Let's say you create a face and then it occurred to you that you want to do something else. You want to create it differently. How do you delete this face? Control, you see how control would add new subdivisions. Control and shift held down, it will allow you to delete components. Let's say for instance here, control and shift, there you go. Shift, rebuild. Okay? And if you're looking for different or more features, you remember how I said Control, Shift, and then left mouse button to delete a component? Instead of the left mouse button, instead hold down right mouse button. Check this out. It gives you new features to experiment with. And going back to the Control Shift left mouse button, as I mentioned, it would apply for components, but also it would apply for loops. Control Shift and left mouse button on this whole edge, gone. So strategic approaches for using the Quadro tool, instead of going bit by bit here and going like 1 point, 1 point, 1 point, and then shift, shift, what I would do is I would go further. And then after I create those points, meaning this way, as I showed before, you can use then the control, so like this, and then click, there you go. So this way it would save you the time of going like, oh, 1 point here, and then 1 point here, and then face, and then face. No, just Control Shift, delete that edge that I've just created. Even Control Shift, delete, delete, right? So this way, Shift, Shift, and as I showed before, there you go. With one swipe of the mouse, click, click. And like I also mentioned before, you want to focus on the key features. So this point here that would really stress the look of that creature, at least hypothetically. So I want to just go and make sure that I have exactly that loop. Because focusing on the main components that would really make the look is what makes a successful model. Like in many cases, you see people or 3D artists creating a portrait of someone, and even with the gray geometry, it has that resemblance to the character. And that's because every point or every subdivision is exactly what it's supposed to be in order for it to correlate to the features of the character they're trying to make. That's why we need to focus on, okay, if this creature has this really sharp kind of angle here, then I have to focus on that first and then reference everything else. Now click and hold the control, and then with the left mouse button, there you go. And now I can also experiment with shift and massaging the geometry. And now that it's built this way, shift and massage the internal geometry and not the ones on the edge, just so I maintain exactly the look that I'm hoping for. And lastly, for those who are still listening, this is your bonus. This is the treat that you have earned for sticking around, bearing with me till the end. Here is the secret weapon. Well, it's not really a secret weapon, but it's a secret feature if you must. Check this out. When you hold shift and you just massage the geometry. In this case, it's pretty simple. It's just a small object and you have just massaged the eye. Now let me tell you something that I discovered by doing a lot of experimentation with this tool. That is, you know the soft selection in Maya? Shortcut or hotkey for it is B. Check this out. Immediately after you click the B, you start to see that whole range. And as soon as you hover the mouse over the component, you see how many of those components it's going to influence. Okay, what does that do? Check this out. And of course, as of now, it seems useless, but if you hold shift, see that? See that organic shift? One more time. As of now, it looks like this. And because of the soft selection, hold shift. And now with the left mouse button to do just a simple relaxation of the geometry, and check this out. It's giving you a much more organic feel. See? It's crazy. Now here is something else. Okay. Now that you're still listening, you hold down B, and now I'm gonna hold down B and then drag with the left mouse button. And in case you didn't know what that is, it is going to reduce the radius of the soft selection. So now it is making smaller radius of influence. Meaning, by holding shift now, it's only going to give you that extra organic relaxation for a smaller range, which gives you more control while giving you this secret feature. Anyhow, I hope this video was helpful, and let me know if you would like to see the full body being retopologized. Thanks for watching.